At 11:47 p.m. on a Friday night, Marcus Webb opened his front door and found his boss standing on his porch in a wedding gown. Catherine Sterling, billionaire, CEO, corporate legend,
I brought this
untouchable
for
force
you.
of nature,
Oh,
stood
thank
trembling under
you.
his porch
It's
light,
beautiful.
with
I'm glad.
mascara streaking her face and a 10-carat engagement ring blazing on her finger. Her wedding was 12 hours away. Every major news outlet in the country would be covering it. Her fiancé was waiting at a 5-star hotel downtown, and she was here at his door whispering 3 words that would shatter both their worlds: "I can't marry him." Marcus Webb had built his entire life around routine. Wake at 6, make breakfast. Pack Emma's lunch with the crust, cut off her sandwich exactly the way she liked. Drop her at school by 7:30. Arrive at Sterling Technologies by 8. Work until 5. Pick up Emma. Dinner, homework, bedtime stories. Repeat. It was a small life, a careful life, a life constructed with the deliberate precision of a man who'd already survived one catastrophe and refused to risk another. His wife Natalie had died 3 years ago. Sudden, senseless, a drunk driver on a Tuesday afternoon. Emma had been 3 years old, still young enough that her memories of her mother would fade into the soft blur of early childhood. Marcus carried enough grief for both of them. So he'd made a promise at Natalie's grave he would give Emma stability, safety, a childhood unmarred by chaos. No unnecessary risks, no drama, no complications that might crack the fragile peace he'd fought so hard to build. That promise had kept him going through the darkest months. It had given him purpose when grief threatened to swallow him whole. It had become his North Star, the single principle that governed every decision he made, which was why, at 11:47 p.m., on the night before Catherine Sterling's wedding, when his doorbell rang and shattered the silence of his quiet apartment, Marcus's first instinct was to ignore it. Emma was asleep. The dishes were done. The world outside could wait until morning. But the doorbell rang again. Urgent, insistent. Marcus crossed the small living room, past Emma's art projects taped to the walls, past the worn couch he'd bought secondhand, past the life he'd carefully constructed, and opened the door. Catherine Sterling stood on his porch. For a moment, Marcus's brain simply refused to process what he was seeing. It was like finding a lion in your driveway or a spaceship in your backyard. The image was so incongruous with reality that his mind couldn't quite make sense of it. Catherine Sterling didn't visit employees at their homes. Catherine Sterling didn't visit anyone. She was a woman who lived in corner offices and penthouse suites, who appeared in Forbes and Fortune, who moved through the world with the kind of controlled power that made grown men stammer. And yet here she was. Her wedding dress was a masterpiece of silk and lace, clearly custom-made by Carolina Herrera, probably worth more than Marcus's car. But it was wrinkled now, the hem stained with dirt. Her dark hair, usually swept into an immaculate chignon, hung loose around her shoulders. Her makeup, what remained of it, was smudged beneath red-rimmed eyes. She looked utterly devastatingly human. The pair of Manolo Blahnik heels dangled from one hand, abandoned. Marcus managed one word: Catherine. Her voice cracked on his name. He should have asked what was wrong. He should have asked if she was hurt, if someone had attacked her, if she needed him to call the police. But the only words that came out were, "You're supposed to be at the Bellevue." The Bellevue Hotel, where her rehearsal dinner had been held, where her bridesmaids were presumably drunk on champagne, and her fiancé was probably wondering where his bride had disappeared to. Catherine's laugh was hollow, broken at the edges. "I know where I'm supposed to be." "Then why?" "Because I can't do it." The words tumbled out in a rush, desperate and raw. "I can't marry him, Marcus. I can't walk down that aisle tomorrow and promise forever to someone I don't love. I can't." Her voice broke completely. "I can't keep pretending." Marcus's hand tightened on the doorframe. Every instinct screamed at him to step back, to close the door, to protect the careful boundaries he'd drawn around his life. This was his boss. This was Catherine Sterling. This was a complication of catastrophic proportions. But she was also crying on his doorstep in a wedding dress, and he wasn't the kind of man who could turn away from that. "Come inside." Catherine's shoulders sagged with relief. She stepped across the threshold and Marcus caught the faint scent of her perfume. Estee Lauder, something expensive and floral that belonged to a different world than his cramped apartment. He closed the door behind her. The click of the latch felt final, like the sound of a door closing on his old life and opening onto something terrifying and unknown. "I'm sorry." Catherine stood in the center of his living room looking lost and out of place among the mismatched furniture and children's toys scattered across the floor. "I shouldn't have come here. I didn't know where else to go. Everyone else, they're all at the hotel, or they're part of the wedding, or they're—" She pressed her palms to her temples, the enormous diamond catching the lamplight. "You're the only person I could think of who might just listen without judgment, without an agenda." Marcus studied her carefully. He'd worked for Catherine Sterling for 2 years, but he'd really worked with her for the past 4 months. The Atlas Project, a massive technological initiative that would revolutionize Sterling Technologies' entire infrastructure, had required countless late nights, endless troubleshooting sessions, and the kind of intense collaboration that stripped away professional pretense. He'd seen her frustrated. He'd seen her exhausted. He'd seen her brilliant and fierce and occasionally funny in a dry, unexpected way. But he'd never seen her like this, unraveled, vulnerable, stripped of the armor she wore so naturally. "Sit." He gestured to the couch. "I'll make coffee." "I don't want coffee." "Then I'll make it for me and you can sit." Something flickered across Catherine's face, surprise maybe, or gratitude. She sank onto the couch, her enormous dress pooling around her like a silk cloud. Marcus escaped to the kitchen, grateful for something to do with his hands. He measured coffee grounds with shaking fingers, his mind racing. This was insane. This was career suicide. This was Daddy. Marcus spun around. Emma stood in the hallway rubbing her eyes, her brown hair sticking up in wild directions. She wore her favorite pajamas, the ones with cartoon unicorns, and clutched her stuffed rabbit to her chest. "Hey, sweetheart." Marcus crossed to her quickly, kneeling to her level. "What are you doing up?" "I heard voices." Emma's gaze drifted past him to the living room. Her eyes went wide round with wonder and confusion. "Daddy, there's a princess in our house." Despite everything, Marcus felt a smile tug at his lips. To a 6-year-old, a woman in an elaborate white gown could only be one thing. "That's not a princess, honey. I'm Catherine." Catherine appeared in the kitchen doorway, and Marcus was struck by the transformation in her face. The raw desperation had been replaced by something gentler, more controlled. She crouched down, bringing herself to Emma's height, moving with surprising ease despite the massive dress. "And you must be Emma. Your dad talks about you all the time." Emma considered this with the serious concentration only a child could muster. "Are you sad your face looks like when I cried about losing Mr. Whiskers?" Catherine blinked rapidly, fighting back fresh tears. "Yes, I'm very sad right now." "Did you lose your rabbit too?" "Something like that." Emma's expression turned thoughtful, processing this information with the simple logic of childhood. Then she tugged on Marcus's sleeve with sudden determination. "Daddy, we should make her hot chocolate with the tiny marshmallows. That's what we do when we're sad." Marcus's chest tightened. After Natalie died, he and Emma had established their own small rituals for grief. Hot chocolate with tiny marshmallows was their remedy for bad days, for scraped knees, for nightmares. It was their family cure, born from the darkest period of their lives. "I think that's a wonderful idea." 20 minutes later, the three of them sat around Marcus's small kitchen table. Emma had insisted Catherine sit in the special chair, the one with the embroidered cushion Natalie had made years ago, her hands creating something beautiful that would outlast her. The hot chocolate steamed in mismatched mugs, tiny marshmallows floating on the surface like small clouds. "The trick," Emma explained with the gravity of someone sharing sacred knowledge, "is to let the marshmallows melt just a little bit, but not all the way. That's the perfect time to drink it." Catherine wrapped her hands around the mug, her fingers pale against the ceramic. "Thank you, Emma. This is exactly what I needed." "You're welcome." Emma took a careful sip, leaving a chocolate mustache on her upper lip that she didn't bother to wipe away. Why are you wearing a wedding dress if you're sad? Aren't weddings supposed to be happy? The question was so direct, so innocently cutting, that Marcus saw Catherine flinch. Children had a way of excavating truth with surgical precision, asking the questions adults learned to avoid. They are, Catherine said, carefully choosing her words with visible effort. But sometimes we think we want something, and then we realize we were wrong. Like when I thought I wanted a pet snake, but then I saw a real one at the zoo and it was scary. Exactly like that. Emma nodded, sagely satisfied with this explanation. Daddy says it's okay to change your mind. That's what being brave is. Catherine's eyes met Marcus's across the table. Something passed between them in that moment, a current of understanding, of recognition, of possibility that made his pulse quicken. Your daddy is very smart, Catherine whispered. After Emma finished her hot chocolate, Marcus carried her back to bed. She was already half asleep, her head heavy on his shoulder, the weight of her trust absolute and terrifying. Is the princess going to be okay? She mumbled. I think so, sweetheart. Good. I like her. Marcus tucked Emma in, kissed her forehead, and stood in the doorway for a long moment, watching her chest rise and fall with the steady rhythm of sleep. This was his world, this room with its glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling, its bookshelf overflowing with picture books, its evidence of a childhood he was trying desperately to protect. Opening the door to Catherine had been a risk, but Emma's words echoed in his mind with unexpected clarity. That's what being brave is. When he returned to the kitchen, Catherine was staring into her empty mug with the expression of someone trying to find answers in the dregs. She'd kicked off the expensive shoes and they lay abandoned beneath the table like relics of a life she was leaving behind. She's wonderful, Catherine said without looking up. You've done an amazing job with her. She's the easy part. She makes everything worthwhile. Still raising a child alone. Catherine trailed off, the sentence hanging incomplete in the air between them. Marcus poured himself coffee and sat down across from her, the table suddenly feeling both too wide and not wide enough. You want to tell me what happened tonight? Catherine was quiet for so long he thought she might not answer. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely audible, each word pulled from somewhere deep and painful. Preston proposed to me 6 months ago. We'd been dating for 14 months before that. It made sense, you understand. He's from the right family. He understands the business world. He never asks too much of me emotionally. Everyone approved. My father was thrilled. The board loved it. It was... She laughed bitterly, the sound sharp and wrong in the quiet kitchen. It was the perfect merger. But you don't love him. No. The word was simple, devastating in its honesty. I don't love him. I'm not sure I even like him very much. He's arrogant and dismissive, and he calls me Kathy even though I've asked him not to 100 times. He talks over me at dinner parties, treats waitstaff like servants, checks his phone during conversations. But he checked all the boxes, and I thought... Her hands trembled around the mug. I thought I could do it. I thought I could build a life on practicality and mutual benefit. I thought love was a luxury I'd given up when I chose this path. Marcus knew about the path she meant. Catherine had inherited sterling technologies from her father at 28, the youngest CEO in the company's history. She'd spent the past decade proving herself, building an empire, crushing anyone who underestimated her. She'd sacrificed everything for that success: relationships, personal time, the possibility of a life beyond the boardroom. What changed? Catherine's eyes finally met his. They were extraordinary eyes, dark and intelligent, and currently filled with a vulnerability that made his chest ache. You did, she whispered. The words hung in the air between them, impossible and true. Marcus's heart stuttered, his carefully constructed walls cracking under the weight of that confession. Catherine, let me finish, please. She took a shaky breath, gathering courage from somewhere deep. These past 4 months working on Atlas, I've spent more time with you than with Preston. All those late nights in the office, all those strategy sessions, all those moments when the work got frustrating and you'd make some terrible joke to lighten the mood. A tear slid down her cheek, carving a path through her makeup. You treated me like a person, Marcus. Not a CEO, not a power broker, not a trophy to be displayed at charity galas. Just a person who gets tired and frustrated and occasionally needs terrible coffee at 2 in the morning. Catherine, I'm your employee. I know. She laughed through her tears, the sound breaking. Believe me, I know. I've tried so hard to ignore it. I've tried to be professional, to maintain boundaries, to convince myself it was just stress or exhaustion or loneliness. But tonight, standing in that hotel room putting on this ridiculous dress, I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't marry someone I don't love when— Her voice broke completely. When I'm in love with someone else. The confession shattered something inside Marcus's carefully constructed defenses. Because the truth was, he'd felt it too. He'd felt it in the way his pulse quickened when Catherine walked into a meeting, in the way he found excuses to stay late at the office just to spend more time in her presence, in the way her rare smiles felt like victories he wanted to earn over and over again. He'd felt it, and he'd buried it because Catherine Sterling was untouchable. She was his boss. She was engaged. She was from a world so different from his own that the distance might as well have been measured in light years. I can't ask you to feel the same way, Catherine continued, her words rushing together in desperation. I know this is insane. I know I'm asking you to risk everything, your job, your stability, the life you've built for Emma. I'm not asking for anything, Marcus. I just needed you to know. I needed one person in the world to know the truth before I go through with a marriage that's a lie. You're not going through with it. Catherine's laugh was hollow, empty of hope. What choice do I have? If I cancel now, the scandal will be catastrophic. The board will lose confidence. My father will be humiliated. Sterling Technologies' stock will tank. I'll destroy everything I've built. So you'll destroy yourself instead. That's what CEOs do. We make the hard calls. Marcus leaned forward, his voice fierce with sudden conviction. That's what CEOs do when they're making business decisions. This isn't business, Catherine. This is your life. This is your future. You can't sacrifice that on the altar of optics and stock prices. Her response was sharp, cutting. Says the man who sacrificed everything for stability. The words landed like a punch because she was right. Marcus had built his entire existence around avoiding risk, around protecting Emma from any hint of chaos. He'd chosen safety over everything else, constructed walls so high and thick that nothing could penetrate them. But looking at Catherine now, brilliant, broken, brave enough to walk away from a billion-dollar wedding, he realized that safety had a cost too. You could protect yourself so thoroughly that you forgot how to live. I don't love him, Catherine whispered into the heavy silence. I love you. The confession hung between them, terrifying and true. Marcus's mind raced through 1,000 objections, the professional disaster this would create, the gossip, the scandal, the impact on Emma, the complete upheaval of the careful life he'd built. But beneath all of that, one truth burned brighter than all his fears: he loved her too. He'd fallen in love with Catherine Sterling somewhere between their third late-night brainstorming session and the moment she'd admitted she secretly loved terrible action movies. He'd fallen in love with her sharp wit and her unexpected kindness, with the way she listened when he talked about Emma, with the person she was when she let her guard down. He'd fallen in love with her, and he'd convinced himself it didn't matter. But it did matter. It mattered more than anything. I need to tell you something, Marcus said quietly, his voice steady despite the chaos in his chest. And after I do, if you want to leave, I'll understand. Catherine waited, her entire body tense with anticipation and dread. I love you too. The words felt like jumping off a cliff. I've loved you for months. I've tried to ignore it, to rationalize it away, to convince myself it was just professional admiration or loneliness or— He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated with his inability to articulate something so simple and so complicated. But it's not. It's real. And it terrifies me because loving you means risking everything I've built. It means exposing Emma to uncertainty and chaos. It means gambling our entire future on something that might destroy us. Then don't. Catherine stood abruptly, her dress rustling like thunder. Don't risk it, Marcus. You have Emma to think about. You have a life that works. I shouldn't have. She pressed her hands to her face, her shoulders shaking. "I should go." But she didn't move toward the door. She stood frozen in the center of his kitchen, trapped between what she wanted and what she thought was right. Marcus stood too, crossing the small space until he was standing in front of her, close enough to see the gold flecks in her dark eyes, close enough to smell her perfume mixed with the lingering scent of chocolate. "What do you want, Catherine?" "I want—" Her voice broke words, dissolving into something raw and desperate. "I want to be brave enough to choose what I want instead of what everyone expects. I want to build a life that's real instead of perfect. I want—" She looked up at him, tears streaming down her face, and he saw everything she couldn't say written in her expression. "I want you, Marcus. I want you and Emma and Sunday morning pancakes and a life that isn't scripted. But I can't ask you to give up everything for that." "What if I want to?" The question hung in the air, impossible and true. Catherine's eyes widened, searching his face for certainty, for promises he couldn't make. "Marcus, I've spent 3 years building a life around safety." Marcus said, the words coming faster now, pulled from somewhere deep and honest. "Around protecting Emma from anything that might hurt her. And it's been the right thing to do. But tonight, watching her with you, seeing how naturally you connected—" He paused, gathering his thoughts. "I realized something. I've been so focused on protecting her from loss that I forgot to show her what it looks like to choose love, to be brave, to take the kind of risk that might lead to something beautiful. Or it might lead to disaster." Marcus reached out, hesitating for just a moment before taking her hand. Her fingers were cold, trembling in his grip. "But isn't that what living is? Taking risks. Choosing courage over comfort." Catherine stared at their joined hands, at the contrast between her expensive engagement ring and his calloused fingers. "If I cancel this wedding, the fallout will be nuclear. The media will tear us apart. Your life will become a circus. Emma will be caught in the crossfire." "I know. You'll lose your job. I'll probably lose mine. We'll be starting from scratch." "I know. So why—" Catherine's voice cracked, desperate for understanding. "Why would you risk all of that?" Marcus lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a gentle kiss to her knuckles. The gesture felt like a promise, like a leap of faith into an uncertain future. "Because some things are worth the risk," he said quietly. "And you are one of them." Catherine made a sound halfway between a laugh and a sob. "You're insane." "Probably. This is going to be a disaster." "Most likely. I'm still your boss." "Not if I quit." Catherine's eyes snapped to his wide with shock and something that might have been hope. "You can't quit. You love that job." Marcus's voice was firm, certain in a way he hadn't felt in 3 years. "I love you more." The confession hung between them, terrifying and liberating. Catherine stared at him, and Marcus could see the exact moment she made her decision. The moment she chose courage over safety, love over logic, the unknown over the comfortable lie. She kissed him. It was soft and desperate and tasted like chocolate and salt tears. It was the kind of kiss that felt like coming home and jumping off a cliff at the same time. It was the kiss Marcus had been imagining for months, the one he'd convinced himself he could never have. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Catherine rested her forehead against his. "What do we do now?" she whispered. Marcus's laugh was shaky, overwhelmed by the enormity of what they'd just admitted. "Now you call off a wedding." The reality of it crashed over them like a wave. In 12 hours, 500 guests would be gathering at the Cathedral of St. James. The flowers were arranged, the cake was prepared, the photographer was booked, the media was ready to cover the wedding of the decade, and Catherine Sterling was standing in a run-down apartment in Brooklyn kissing her subordinate. "My phone," Catherine said, suddenly pulling away with wide eyes. "I left my phone in the car. Preston's probably losing his mind. My father, oh God, my father is probably organizing a search party." "Where's your car?" "2 blocks away. I couldn't risk anyone seeing me pull up here." She pressed her hands to her temples, panic creeping back into her voice. "This is insane. I abandoned my own rehearsal dinner. I'm supposed to be at the hotel. I'm supposed to be—" "Breathe." Marcus took her hands, grounding her with his touch. "One step at a time. Do you want to marry Preston?" "No." "Are you sure?" "Yes." "Then everything else is just logistics." Catherine's laugh was slightly hysterical, edged with disbelief. "Logistics. Right. Just canceling a multi-million-dollar wedding and destroying my family's reputation and probably tanking my company's stock price. Simple logistics." "You're Catherine Sterling," Marcus said with quiet confidence. "You've handled hostile takeovers and board rebellions and industry disruptions. You can handle this." She looked at him, and something in her expression shifted. The panic receded, replaced by the steel he'd seen her use in boardrooms, the strength that had built an empire. "You're right," she said slowly. "I've been treating this like something that's happening to me. But I'm not a victim here. I'm making a choice." She straightened her shoulders, and Marcus watched her transform before his eyes. This was the CEO who'd built an empire from inherited potential. "I need to get back to the hotel. I need to talk to Preston face to face. He deserves that much. Do you want me to come with you?" "No." Catherine cupped his face, her touch gentle despite the determination in her eyes. "This is something I need to do alone. But Marcus—" Her eyes searched his face, looking for cracks in his certainty. "Tomorrow, when this all explodes, when the media starts digging and the gossip starts flying, they're going to come after you. After Emma. Are you absolutely sure?" "I'm sure." She kissed him again, soft and quick, a promise sealed. "I'll call you when it's done." Marcus walked her to the door. The hallway was dark, the building quiet around them. In a few hours the sun would rise on what should have been Catherine's wedding day. Instead, it would rise on chaos. At the threshold, Catherine paused, looking back at his apartment, at the modest furniture, the children's artwork on the walls, the life so different from everything she'd known. "Thank you," she said softly. "For what?" "For opening the door." Then she was gone, disappearing into the night in her wedding dress, heading back to destroy her perfect life and build something real instead. Marcus closed the door and leaned against it, his heart pounding. He'd just encouraged his boss to cancel her wedding. He'd confessed his love to a woman so far out of his league it was laughable. He'd promised to risk everything, his job, his stability, Emma's security, on a relationship that might not survive the coming storm. He'd done the bravest, stupidest thing of his life, and he didn't regret it. Not yet. Not when he could still feel Catherine's kiss on his lips, still hear her confession echoing, "I love you." Marcus pushed off the door and walked to Emma's room. She was still asleep, her small body curled around her stuffed rabbit, completely unaware that her father had just set their lives on a collision course with chaos. The glow-in-the-dark stars on her ceiling cast a faint green light across her peaceful face. "I hope I'm doing the right thing, baby girl," he whispered to the sleeping child. The night stretched on. Marcus tried to sleep and failed. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, his phone clutched in his hand, mind racing through scenarios. Best case, they survived the scandal, built a life together. Worst case, he lost everything. Emma suffered. The relationship crumbled under pressure. Every possibility was terrifying. At 3:47 a.m. his phone rang. Catherine's name flashed on the screen, sending his heart into overdrive. "Hello?" "It's done." Catherine's voice was steady, but he could hear the tremor beneath it, the cost of what she'd just done. "I told Preston. I told my father. The wedding is canceled." Marcus sat up, fully awake. How did they take it? Preston threatened to sue. Breach of contract. Apparently our engagement had financial implications I wasn't aware of. Her laugh was brittle sharp. "My father stopped speaking to me entirely. Just walked out of the room without a word. My mother is sedated. The hotel is in chaos. It's—" She paused, and he heard her take a shaky breath. It's exactly as catastrophic as expected. I'm sorry. Don't be. I made my choice. Silence stretched between them, heavy with implication. Marcus, there's something else. The media has the story. Someone leaked it, probably one of the hotel staff. By tomorrow morning this will be everywhere. He understood what she wasn't saying. The media would dig. They'd find out about their working relationship. They'd connect the dots. And when they did, Marcus's name would be dragged through every gossip site and tabloid in the country. We knew this was coming. Knowing it and living it are different things. Catherine's voice softened. Marcus, if you want to back out, I'll understand. I can protect you. I can tell them it was all me, that you had nothing to do with. No. The word came out fierce, absolute. We're in this together. Whatever comes. He heard her breath catch. Together. Together. They stayed on the phone for another hour, talking about everything and nothing. Catherine described the look on Preston's face when she'd returned his ring shock, then anger, then something that might have been relief buried deep. Marcus told her about Lily's latest obsession with dinosaurs, about the elaborate trap they'd set using chicken nuggets as bait for the imaginary T-Rex living in their basement. They talked like people who just jumped off a cliff and were free-falling together, trying to find solid ground before impact. When they finally hung up, dawn was breaking over Brooklyn, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Marcus got out of bed, made coffee, and stared at his phone. The first articles appeared at 6:15 a.m., headlines screaming across news sites and social media. Catherine Sterling cancels billion-dollar wedding. Tech CEO calls off ceremony hours before I do. Sterling Technologies in chaos as founder's daughter abandons groom. By 7, his phone was ringing non-stop. Unknown numbers, reporters, his parents who'd seen the news, his sister Rachel. Are you kidding me right now? Call me. His best friend Jason. Dude, what did you do? Marcus turned off his phone. He made breakfast for Emma, pancakes, slightly burnt, exactly how Saturday morning should be. She chatted about her upcoming dance recital, completely oblivious to the storm gathering outside their door. At 9, someone knocked on the door. Marcus checked the peephole and saw a news crew camera's ready reporter with microphone. He didn't answer. They knocked again, persistent. Daddy, Emma said, looking up from her pancakes with syrup-covered confusion. Why are there people outside? They're just confused, sweetheart. They'll leave soon. But they didn't leave. By noon, there were 3 news vans parked on his street. Neighbors stared. Someone took photos. Marcus's phone, still off, would be filled with messages from work, from reporters, from people he hadn't spoken to in years, suddenly curious about his connection to Catherine Sterling. The careful life he'd built was crumbling, and still he didn't regret opening that door. At 2 in the afternoon, Marcus powered his phone back on. It immediately began vibrating with such fury that Emma looked up from her coloring book, startled. Daddy, is your phone angry? Just confused, sweetheart. 73 missed calls, 142 text messages, 17 voicemails. Marcus scrolled through them with mounting dread, watching his carefully constructed life disintegrate in real time. But it was the message from Jonathan Reeves, 5th P of Human Resources at Sterling Technologies, that made his stomach drop. Marcus, we need you to come to the office immediately. Do not speak to the press. This was it. The reckoning he'd known was coming. His phone rang again, Catherine's name flashing on the screen. Where are you? She asked without preamble, her voice tight and controlled. Home. There are news vans outside. I know. They're outside my building too. She paused, and he heard papers rustling in the background. Marcus, listen to me carefully. Don't talk to any of them. Don't answer any questions. Don't even acknowledge them. HR wants me to come in. A longer pause. I know. I'm the one who told them to call you. Marcus's chest tightened with understanding and dread. Catherine, we need to get ahead of this. The board is meeting in 2 hours. They're questioning my leadership, my judgment. They want to know why I canceled my wedding. Her breath caught. And they want to know if it has anything to do with company personnel. Tell them the truth. The truth will get you fired. I know. Marcus, you have a daughter. You can't just— I can. Marcus interrupted, his voice steady with certainty. And I will. I'm not going to let you take the fall for this alone. He heard Catherine's breath catch emotion breaking through her controlled facade. You're impossible. I'm in love with you. Despite everything, she laughed, the sound strained but real. Same thing. Getting out of the building proved to be the first real test of Marcus's resolve. The moment he opened the front door with Emma's hand clutched tight in his, cameras erupted in a cacophony of flashes and shouted questions that hit like physical blows. Mr. Webb, were you having an affair with Catherine Sterling? How long has this been going on? Did you know she was engaged? What do you have to say about the canceled wedding? Marcus pulled Emma close, shielding her face against his jacket. She made a small, frightened sound that carved something raw in his chest. It's okay, baby. We're just going to walk to the car. Don't look at them. Just hold my hand. They pushed through the crowd. Marcus's jaw clenched so tight his teeth ached. A reporter stepped directly into their path, microphone extended like a weapon aimed at his daughter's innocence. Mr. Webb, is it true that you're the reason Catherine Sterling— Move. The word came out low, dangerous, stripped of everything civilized. My daughter is 6 years old. Move. Something in his tone must have registered because the reporter stepped back, creating just enough space for Marcus to get Emma into the car. His hands shook as he buckled her in, his heart pounding with protective fury. When he slid into the driver's seat, he had to grip the steering wheel for a long moment before trusting himself to drive. Daddy, who were those people? Emma's voice was small, confused, afraid in a way that made him want to turn the car around and fight every single person with a camera. Just reporters, sweetheart. They're like really nosy people who ask questions for their jobs. Why do they want to talk to you? Marcus pulled into traffic, checking the rearview mirror compulsively. Because Catherine is very famous, and famous people's lives are interesting to other people. Is Catherine in trouble? No, honey, she's not in trouble. Are you in trouble? Marcus met his daughter's eyes in the mirror, wide, trusting eyes that believed her father could fix anything. I don't know yet. Catherine's building was in Manhattan's most exclusive district, the kind of place where doormen wore uniforms and the lobby featured actual artwork worth more than most people's houses. Marcus had been here once before, dropping off documents Catherine had forgotten at the office. He'd felt out of place then. Now arriving with his daughter while news helicopters circled overhead, he felt like an imposter stepping into a world that would reject him on sight. The doorman recognized him immediately. Mr. Webb, Miss Sterling is expecting you. Please use the private elevator. They rode up in silence, Emma pressing her face to the glass, watching the city shrink beneath them. We're so high up, she whispered with a mixture of wonder and vertigo. The elevator opened directly into Catherine's penthouse. Marcus had never seen the inside of her apartment before, and the sight stopped him cold. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Central Park, the autumn trees a tapestry of gold and red. Modern furniture in shades of cream and gray created spaces that felt more like a museum than a home. Art that probably cost more than his annual salary hung on walls that had never known crayon marks or finger smudges. Catherine stood by the windows, still wearing the jeans and sweater from her confrontation with Preston. Her hair was pulled back in a ponytail, no makeup exhaustion carved into every line of her face. When she saw Emma, though, her entire expression softened into something warmer. Hi, Emma. Thank you for coming. Emma hid halfway behind Marcus's leg, suddenly shy in this enormous space. Your house is really big. Catherine knelt down, bringing herself to Emma's level with practiced ease. It is, isn't it? Sometimes it feels too big. Would you like to see the view? Emma nodded, taking Catherine's offered hand with the simple trust of childhood. Marcus watched them walk to the windows, Catherine pointing out landmarks, while Emma pressed her nose to the glass, and something in his chest loosened despite the chaos gathering around them. Mrs. Chen appeared from another room, an older woman with a kind face and gentle hands. She knelt to Emma's level with the ease of someone who'd spent decades caring for children. "I have cookies, and I thought maybe we could watch a movie. I have all the princess ones." Emma looked at Marcus for permission. He nodded, even though every instinct screamed to keep her close to protect her from whatever was coming. "I'll be back soon, sweetheart. Be good for Mrs. Chen." "I will, Daddy. Don't worry." If only it were that simple. Once Emma was settled in another room, the mask Catherine had worn for his daughter fell away, revealing the strain beneath. "The board wants answers. My father is demanding I make a statement denouncing the relationship. Preston's lawyers are threatening legal action for breach of contract. Apparently our engagement had financial implications tied to business dealings between our families." She pressed her fingers to her temples, fighting against pressure that threatened to split her skull. "And the media, they're calling it everything from a mental breakdown to a calculated publicity stunt. What do you want to do?" "I want to tell the truth." Catherine's jaw set with determination Marcus recognized from boardrooms. "I want to walk into that meeting and tell them I fell in love with someone who treats me like a human being instead of a corporate asset. I want to tell them that canceling my wedding was the sanest decision I've ever made." "They'll force you out." "Probably." "Catherine, I built this company from the ground up." Her voice turned fierce, filled with the steel that had built empires. "I've given it everything, but I'm not going to lie about who I am to keep it. I'm not going to pretend to be the perfect CEO who makes perfect decisions and has a perfect life. That version of me, the one who would have married Preston for optics and stock prices, she's gone." Marcus crossed to her, taking her hands in his. "Then we tell them together. If you walk into that meeting with me, you're done. They'll fire you on the spot." "I know. You'll lose your benefits, your stock options, everything you've worked for." "I know." Catherine's eyes searched his face, looking for cracks in his certainty. "Why are you doing this?" "Because watching you be brave makes me want to be brave too." Marcus squeezed her hands, grounding them both. "Because Emma asked me once what love looks like and I couldn't answer her. But now I can. Love looks like standing beside someone even when the whole world is watching you fall." Catherine's composure cracked. She pressed her forehead to his chest, and he felt her shoulders shake with silent tears, the weight of her decision crushing down. "I'm so scared." "Me too." The drive to Sterling Technologies took 25 minutes through midday traffic. They took separate cars, Catherine in her sleek Tesla, Marcus in his 12-year-old sedan. Even now, the contrast between their worlds was stark, impossible to ignore. The office building was under siege. News vans lined the street like military vehicles. Reporters crowded the entrance, held back by security establishing a fragile perimeter. The chaos was palpable, feeding on itself. Marcus met Catherine in the underground parking garage, away from cameras and questions. She'd changed into a power suit, navy blue, perfectly tailored, the armor she wore into battle, but her hand trembled slightly when she reached for the elevator button. "Ready?" "No. But let's do it anyway." The executive floor was eerily quiet. Assistants whispered in corners, their conversations dying when Catherine passed. People averted their eyes, unable or unwilling to meet her gaze. Marcus felt the weight of their stares, their judgment pressing down like atmospheric pressure before a storm. Jonathan Reeves met them outside the boardroom. He was a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses and the perpetually anxious expression of someone who'd spent too long managing corporate crises. "Catherine." "Marcus." He nodded at each of them, his face carefully neutral. "The board is assembled. I should warn you, your father is here." Catherine's face went pale, but her voice remained steady. "I expected he would be." "There's still time to manage this differently." Jonathan's words came carefully, each one weighed and measured. "We could issue a joint statement. Say the wedding was canceled due to mutual differences. Keep the personal details private. Marcus could transfer to a different department, or we could arrange a generous severance package." "No." Catherine's voice was flat, absolute. "We're telling the truth." The truth will destroy your career. Then I'll build a new one." Jonathan looked at Marcus, a question in his eyes that Marcus answered without words. "I'm with her." "Then I hope you both know what you're doing. Good luck." The boardroom was designed to intimidate. A massive table of polished mahogany dominated the space, surrounded by leather chairs that cost more than most cars. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city. Catherine's family had helped build over 3 generations. 12 board members sat around the table. Marcus recognized most of them, titans of industry, venture capitalists, legacy executives who'd been with Sterling Technologies for decades. And at the head of the table sat Robert Sterling. He was a formidable man even in his 70s, silver-haired, steel-eyed, with the kind of presence that commanded rooms without effort. He'd built Sterling Technologies from a small tech startup into a multinational corporation worth billions. He'd groomed Catherine to take over, pushed her to be ruthless, to sacrifice everything for success. Right now he was looking at his daughter like she was a stranger who'd invaded his boardroom. "Catherine." His voice was cold, devoid of paternal warmth. "Please explain to the board why you chose to humiliate this family and jeopardize this company's reputation with your reckless behavior." Catherine walked to the center of the room, her heels clicking against hardwood with steady precision. Marcus stayed by the door, silent support, visible commitment. "I canceled my wedding because I don't love Preston Montgomery. I never did. Marrying him would have been a lie, and I'm done living lies." "Your personal feelings are irrelevant." Robert's words came sharp-cutting. "That marriage was a strategic alliance. The Montgomerys control significant shares in 3 of our largest competitors. This union would have been a business transaction, not a marriage." Catherine interrupted him, her voice gaining strength. "I'm 34 years old, Father. I'm not a chess piece you can move around the board anymore." Margaret Chen, head of the audit committee, cleared her throat. "Catherine, we understand that wedding nerves can cause irrational decisions. If you need time to reconsider—" "I'm not reconsidering." Thomas Rodriguez, one of the younger board members, leaned forward. "Then perhaps you can explain the nature of your relationship with Marcus Webb. The rumors suggest this employee is the reason for your sudden change of heart." All eyes turned to Marcus. He felt like a specimen under glass, examined and found wanting by people who'd decided his worth before he'd entered the room. Catherine's voice cut through the scrutiny. "Marcus and I worked together on the Atlas project. During that time we became close. And yes, I developed feelings for him, feelings that made me realize I couldn't marry Preston." "So you were having an affair with a subordinate?" Robert's voice dripped with disgust, each word a condemnation. "No." Catherine's voice cut like steel, sharp enough to draw blood. "I was falling in love with someone who saw me as more than a corporate figurehead, someone who listened when I spoke, someone who challenged me and supported me and treated me like a person instead of a portfolio." Margaret Chen responded with dry precision. "How touching. Unfortunately, personal fulfillment doesn't pay dividends to our shareholders. Your actions have caused a PR nightmare. Our stock dropped 3% in the first hour of trading this morning. The Montgomery family is threatening to pull their investments. And now you're standing here telling us you sacrificed all of that for—" She gestured dismissively at Marcus. "A junior software engineer." Marcus felt the insult land, but kept his expression neutral, refusing to give them the satisfaction of a reaction. Catherine's response came fierce and unwavering. "I'm telling you I made a choice to be authentic instead of strategic, and I understand if that costs me my position." The room erupted. Board members talked over each other, voices rising in anger and disbelief. "You can't be serious. After everything we've invested in you. This is professional suicide." Robert stood and the room fell silent with practiced deference. He walked slowly toward Catherine, and Marcus saw her fight not to flinch, to hold her ground against the man who'd shaped her entire life. "I raised you to be strong. I raised you to put this company above everything, above comfort, above personal desire, above weakness." He spat the last word like a curse, making it something shameful. "And now you're throwing it all away for what romance, sentiment, love—" He said the word like it was obscene, a concept beneath contempt. Yes. Catherine's voice didn't waver. I'm choosing love. And if that makes me weak in your eyes, then I'll be weak. But I won't be miserable. I won't spend the rest of my life pretending to be someone I'm not just to meet your expectations. Then you're no daughter of mine. The words hung in the air, devastating and final. Catherine's breath hitched, but she didn't break, didn't crumble. If that's how you feel, I'm sorry. But my decision stands. Robert turned to address the board, his voice carrying absolute authority. Then, effective immediately, I'm calling for a vote of no confidence in Catherine Sterling's leadership. All in favor. 6 hands went up immediately without hesitation. Then another. Then another. Marcus watched Catherine's empire crumble in real time, board members abandoning her with the efficiency of people protecting their own interests. Wait. The voice came from the far end of the table. Edward Park, the oldest member of the board, a man who'd been friends with Robert for 40 years. Robert, this is excessive. Catherine has led this company brilliantly for nearly a decade. One personal decision. Robert interrupted with cold precision. One personal decision that demonstrates catastrophic judgment. She prioritized her feelings over her responsibilities. That's not leadership. That's liability. Edward stood, his voice firm despite his age. I disagree. What I see is a woman who had the courage to be honest, to choose authenticity over convenience. Those are qualities we should value, not punish. You're being sentimental, Edward. I'm being realistic. Edward's eyes swept the room. Catherine's personal life is her own business, as long as it doesn't interfere with her professional performance, Margaret interjected sharply. It already has. She humiliated us publicly. The Montgomery Alliance is destroyed. Our reputation is in tatters. Our reputation will recover. It always does. Edward's voice carried conviction born from decades of experience. But if we force out the best CEO this company has ever had because she chose to be true to herself, we'll lose something far more valuable than stock prices. We'll lose our integrity. Silence fell heavy across the room. Margaret's voice cut through it with procedural efficiency. I call for a vote. All in favor of removing Catherine Sterling as CEO. Hands went up. Marcus counted them, his heart sinking with each one. 8. Just shy of the 9 needed for a majority. All opposed 3 hands, Edwards and 2 younger board members who'd been appointed during Catherine's tenure. One person hadn't voted. Thomas Rodriguez, the newest board member, a tech entrepreneur who'd sold his startup to Sterling Technologies the previous year. All eyes turned to him, waiting. Mr. Rodriguez, Margaret prompted. Thomas looked at Catherine for a long moment, weighing something in that silence. I abstain. A tie, which meant Catherine kept her position for now, balanced on a knife's edge. But the message was clear as broken glass. She was on probation. One more misstep and they'd have the votes they needed. This isn't over. Robert gathered his papers with sharp, angry movements. He walked out without looking at his daughter, the door closing behind him with terrible finality. The other board members filtered out, leaving Catherine, Marcus, and Edward alone in the enormous room. Edward crossed to Catherine, his expression gentle. Your father is wrong, my dear. Choosing love over fear isn't weakness. It's the bravest thing anyone can do. He glanced at Marcus with knowing eyes. But be careful. The knives are out now. Watch your back. After he left, Catherine collapsed into a chair. She looked drained, hollowed out, like the confrontation had taken everything she had to give. Marcus knelt beside her, taking her hands. You did it. You stood up to them. I nearly lost everything. But you didn't. Not yet. Catherine's laugh was bitter, stripped of hope. But it's only a matter of time. They're going to watch me like hawks now, waiting for me to fail. And when I do... She didn't finish the sentence. Then we'll figure it out together. Before Catherine could respond, Jonathan rushed in, his face pale with fresh disaster. Catherine, we have a problem. Preston Montgomery just gave an interview to the New York Times. He handed her his phone, his hand shaking slightly. You should see this. Catherine scrolled through the article, her face draining of color with each paragraph. Marcus read over her shoulder, his stomach dropping. The headline screamed, "Abandoned Groom Speaks Out. She Chose Corporate Ambition Over Love." Preston had painted himself as the devoted fiancé betrayed by his power-hungry bride. He implied the affair had been going on for months. He suggested Catherine had used him for his family's connections while carrying on with an employee behind his back. All lies but believable lies, wrapped in the wounded dignity of a man scorned. The article was already viral, spreading across social media like wildfire. "He's destroying you." Jonathan's voice was quiet, defeated. "The narrative is shifting. People are starting to see you as the villain." Catherine set down the phone with shaking hands. "Then we changed the narrative." "How?" She looked at Marcus, her eyes finding strength in his presence. "We tell our story. The real one. Not through lawyers or press releases. Directly. Honestly." Jonathan looked like he might be sick. "Catherine, that's risky. The board will never approve." "I'm not asking for their approval." Her voice turned hard, certain. "Set it up. The most credible journalist you can find. Tomorrow night. Live interview." After Jonathan left, muttering about professional suicide, Catherine turned to Marcus. "I'm sorry. This is spiraling out of control faster than I anticipated. Don't apologize. This is what we signed up for. Emma's going to see all of this. Kids at her school." "I know." Marcus's hands tightened on hers. "Catherine, maybe we should—" "Don't." She pulled away, standing abruptly. "Don't start second-guessing this. Don't let them make you doubt what we feel." "I'm not doubting what I feel. I'm doubting whether I have the right to ask you to sacrifice so much." "You're not asking. I'm choosing." Marcus crossed to her, cupping her face in his hands. "I'm choosing you. I'm choosing us. Whatever comes next, we face it together." Catherine kissed him, then desperate and tender, clinging to him like he was the only solid thing in a crumbling world. When they pulled apart, she rested her forehead against his. "I love you. I know this is insane and reckless and possibly the worst decision either of us has ever made, but I love you. I love you too." They stood there in the empty boardroom, two people who'd chosen each other against impossible odds, knowing that the hardest part was still ahead. Marcus's phone buzzed. A text from Mrs. Chen. "Emma is asking for you. She saw something on TV." His stomach dropped with sickening certainty. "I have to go. Emma, go." Catherine stepped back immediately, her expression shifting to concern. "I'll meet you back at the apartment tonight. We'll figure out the interview, the board, all of it. But right now, Emma needs you." Marcus kissed her once more, then ran. When he arrived at the penthouse, he found Emma curled up on the couch with Mrs. Chen, her face blotchy from crying. The sight broke something in him. This was exactly what he'd feared, his innocent daughter caught in the crossfire of adult chaos. "Emma, baby, what's wrong?" She launched herself into his arms, her small body shaking with sobs. "The TV said mean things about you and Catherine. They said you were bad people. They said—" Her voice broke completely. Marcus held her tight, his heart shattering. "Listen to me, sweetheart. Sometimes people say things that aren't true. Sometimes they say mean things because they don't understand what really happened. But why would they lie?" Marcus struggled for an explanation a 6-year-old could understand. "Because grown-ups sometimes make mistakes. They hear part of a story and think they know everything. But they don't." "Are you and Catherine in love?" Her voice was so small, so vulnerable. Marcus pulled back to look at her, seeing Natalie in her eyes, seeing the future in her question. "Yes. Yes, we are." "Like you and Mommy were?" The question hit like a physical blow. He'd been so careful to preserve Natalie's memory, to make sure Emma knew how much her mother had been loved. "Not exactly like me and Mommy. Every love is different. But yes, I love Catherine very much." Emma was quiet for a long moment, processing this with the seriousness only a child could muster. "Is she going to be my new mommy?" Marcus hadn't thought that far ahead. He and Catherine hadn't talked about the future beyond surviving the present. We haven't talked about that yet, sweetheart. Would that be okay with you if Catherine became part of our family? Emma considered this carefully. She makes good hot chocolate, and she's nice, and she looks at you the way you look at pictures of Mommy. Out of the mouths of children came wisdom that humbled him. Yeah, she does. Emma hugged him tight, her tears subsiding. Then I think it's okay. But Daddy, can we go home? This place is too big. I miss my room. Marcus looked around Catherine's pristine penthouse. Emma was right, this wasn't home. Home was their small apartment with its creaky floors and mismatched furniture and walls covered in Emma's artwork. But could they go back there with reporters still camped outside? His phone rang. Catherine's voice came through tight with concern. Don't go home. There are twice as many reporters there now. Stay at my place tonight, please. I'll be there in an hour. So they stayed. Emma fell asleep on the enormous couch, exhausted from crying and confusion. Marcus covered her with a blanket and stood at the windows watching the city lights blur into a canvas of uncertainty and possibility. When Catherine finally came home, she looked worse than she had at the office. Her perfect suit was wrinkled. Her makeup was smudged beyond repair. She dropped her briefcase by the door and just stood there, swaying slightly with exhaustion and shock. Hey. Marcus crossed to her, his voice soft. You okay? I quit. The words came out barely above a whisper. Marcus's world tilted. What? I quit. I sent my resignation to the board an hour ago. Tears streamed down her face, cutting through makeup and composure. I couldn't do it anymore, Marcus. I couldn't sit in that office and pretend everything was fine while they questioned every decision. I couldn't watch them dismantle everything I'd built because I chose to be happy. She collapsed against him, sobbing. I walked away from everything, the company, my father, my entire life. Her voice choked with grief and terror. And I don't know who I am without it. Marcus held her while she cried out years of pressure and expectations and sacrifice, his own throat tight with emotion. You're you. You're brilliant and brave and strong, and you're free. I'm terrified. Me too. They sank to the floor together, backs against the wall, holding each other while Catherine purged herself of everything she'd been carrying. When the tears finally stopped, she lifted her head, her eyes red and swollen. What do we do now? Marcus looked at Emma, sleeping peacefully on the couch, then back at Catherine, this extraordinary woman who'd given up everything for love. Now we build something new, together. Catherine's hand found his, their fingers intertwining with desperate certainty. Outside, the city glittered with possibility and danger in equal measure. The interview was scheduled for tomorrow. Preston's lawyers were circling. The media was having a field day. But right here in this moment, Marcus felt something he hadn't felt in 3 years' hope. The interview day arrived with all the subtlety of a freight train. Marcus woke on Catherine's guest room floor. He'd insisted she take the bed while he camped out on an air mattress beside Emma's makeshift sleeping area. His back ached, his head throbbed from too little sleep, and his phone was already buzzing with messages he didn't want to read. Catherine appeared in the doorway holding 2 cups of coffee. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun, and she wore yoga pants and an oversized sweatshirt, the most casual he'd ever seen her. Without makeup, without the armor of designer clothes, she looked younger, more vulnerable. Couldn't sleep either. Every time I closed my eyes, I kept rehearsing what I'm going to say tonight. Marcus accepted the coffee gratefully. How do you explain falling in love to millions of people who've already decided you're the villain? You tell the truth and hope some of them listen. Catherine sank down beside him, careful not to wake Emma. Jonathan called at 5 this morning. The interview is trending on social media already. Everyone has an opinion about what we're going to say. Any good ones? Not particularly. She took a sip of coffee. Preston's team has been working overtime. They've positioned him as the heartbroken victim and me as the cold-hearted CEO who destroyed a good man for a cheap affair. The narrative is... She laughed bitterly. It's everything I feared it would be. Then we change it tonight. What if we can't? What if people have already made up their minds? Then at least we'll know we tried. He squeezed her fingers. Catherine, I need you to understand something. Whatever happens tonight, whatever people say about us, I don't regret this. I don't regret opening that door. I don't regret loving you. Catherine's eyes filled with tears. How are you so calm? I'm not calm. I'm terrified. But I'm also— Marcus searched for the right word. Free. For the first time since Natalie died, I'm not just going through the motions. I'm actually living, and that's because of you. She kissed him then, soft and desperate, and Marcus tasted salt from her tears. The studio was chaos. Producers rushed around with clipboards. Technicians adjusted lights and checked camera angles with military precision. A makeup artist descended on Catherine, immediately tutting over her tear-stained face like a sculptor faced with damaged marble. Marcus was ushered into his own chair, where a young woman with bright pink hair began applying foundation. Nervous? Terrified. Don't be. Cameras love authenticity. Just be yourself. Be yourself. Everyone kept saying that like it was simple, like Marcus knew who he was anymore. Was he the careful, cautious single father who'd built his life around routine? Or was he the man who'd fallen in love with his boss and burned his entire world down for a chance at happiness? 5 minutes. Someone called out, and the chaos intensified. Catherine appeared beside him, and Marcus's breath caught. The makeup artist had worked magic. Catherine looked flawless but natural, her eyes bright, her skin glowing. She wore a simple navy dress that somehow managed to look both professional and approachable. You look beautiful. You look like you might throw up. Little bit. She took his hand, squeezing gently. We can still back out. We can release a statement instead and avoid— No. Marcus stood still, holding her hand. We do this together. The interviewer was Karen Walsh, a journalist known for tough but fair questioning. She'd broken major political scandals and interviewed presidents. She was not going easy on them. She greeted them warmly, shaking their hands, but her eyes were assessing, calculating their worth and weaknesses. Thank you for doing this. I know it can't be easy. Catherine replied smoothly, her CEO persona sliding into place. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to tell our side. They were mic'd up and positioned on a curved couch. The studio lights were blinding hot enough that Marcus felt sweat forming at the back of his neck despite the air conditioning. Catherine's hand found his, their fingers intertwining, and some of his panic receded. Whatever happened next, they were in this together. 10 seconds! The director's voice cut through the controlled chaos. The red light on the camera blinked on, and Karen Walsh smiled into the lens with practiced warmth. Good evening. I'm Karen Walsh, and tonight we're joined by Catherine Sterling and Marcus Webb, the couple at the center of what many are calling the scandal of the year. Ms. Sterling, just 48 hours ago you were supposed to marry Preston Ashford in what was being called the wedding of the decade. Instead, you're sitting here with Marcus Webb, a software engineer who worked for your company. Let's start with the obvious question: what happened? Catherine took a breath. Marcus felt her hand tremble in his. I realized I was about to make the biggest mistake of my life. I was about to marry someone I didn't love, someone I wasn't even sure I liked very much because it seemed like the right strategic move, and I couldn't do it. So this wasn't about Marcus Webb. Not entirely. Catherine glanced at him, real emotion flooding her eyes. Marcus made me realize what I'd been missing, what I'd sacrificed in pursuit of professional success. But the decision to cancel the wedding was mine alone. Preston deserved better than a wife who was marrying him for his connections. Karen pressed forward. Preston Ashford has painted a very different picture. He's claimed you were having an affair for months, that you used him while carrying on a relationship with an employee. What do you say to that? Catherine's voice turned firm, certain. It's not true. Marcus and I worked together on a major project. We became friends. And yes, over time those feelings developed into something more. But we never acted on it. There was no affair. Karen turned to Marcus, her gaze sharp. "Mr. Webb, you were an employee at Sterling Technologies, a subordinate. Some might say this relationship represents a significant power imbalance. How do you respond to that?" Marcus's mouth went dry. This was it. The moment that would define how the world saw them. I understand why people might think that. But the truth is, Catherine never treated me like a subordinate. She treated me like a colleague, like an equal. She listened to my ideas. She valued my input. He looked at Catherine. She saw me as a person, not a position on an org chart. And that's what I fell in love with. Not her power, not her money, just her. "But surely you must have known that pursuing a relationship with your boss could have career implications." "I did, and I wrestled with it. Because I'm a single father. I have a daughter to support. Risking my job for a relationship seemed—" Marcus paused, searching for honesty. It seemed reckless. But watching Catherine struggle with a future that made her miserable, watching her sacrifice her own happiness for everyone else's expectations, I realized that sometimes the reckless choice is the right one. Karen shifted her attention back to Catherine. "Your father gave a press conference today essentially disowning you. How does that feel?" Marcus felt Catherine's hand tighten around his. "It feels devastating. My father has always been the most important person in my life. Everything I've done, every success I've achieved has been in some way to earn his approval. Losing that—" her voice cracked slightly. "Losing that hurts more than I can express." "Do you regret your decision?" "No." The word came firm, final. "I regret that my choices hurt people. I regret the pain I caused Preston and my father and everyone who had invested in the wedding. But I don't regret choosing authenticity over performance. I don't regret choosing love." The interview continued for another 30 minutes. Karen pressed them on the timeline of their relationship, on the wedding cancellation, on their plans for the future. They answered as honestly as they could, knowing that every word would be dissected and analyzed by millions. When it was finally over and the camera stopped rolling, Marcus felt like he'd run a marathon. His shirt was damp with sweat. His hands were shaking. Karen Walsh approached them as the crew began breaking down the set. "Off the record," she said quietly. "I believe you. I've interviewed enough liars to know what truth looks like. You two, you're either the real deal or the best actors I've ever seen." "We're the real deal." Marcus's voice came steady. "Then I hope you survive this. Because the court of public opinion is brutal, and they've already made up their minds about you." In the car back to the penthouse, they sat in silence, hands clasped, both too exhausted for words. Marcus's phone buzzed continuously with texts. He glanced at a few. "Jason. Holy shit, dude. You did good. Rooting for you." His mother. "I don't understand what's happening, but I believe you love each other. Come visit soon." His sister Rachel. "That was intense. Call me when you can." But for every supportive message, there were 10 hostile ones. Twitter was on fire with opinions. The hashtag Sterling Scandal was trending. People were taking sides, arguing passionately about whether Catherine and Marcus were romantic heroes or selfish villains. "Don't read the comments." Catherine's voice was quiet. "Too late. I know it doesn't matter what strangers think, but it's hard not to care when they're saying—" She stopped, not wanting to repeat the vicious things flooding social media. They rode the rest of the way in silence, both drowning in judgment from people who'd never met them. 2 months passed like wading through concrete. Marcus lost his job when he resigned. Catherine had already quit. They couldn't go home. Reporters eventually left, but the damage was done. Emma had to switch schools when other parents started gossiping, their whispers poisoning what should have been innocent childhood friendships. Job applications came back rejected. Word spread through the industry like infection: the guy who had an affair with his CEO. Didn't matter that it wasn't an affair. Perception was reality, and Marcus was blacklisted. Savings ran low. Real financial pressure replaced theoretical worry. Catherine sold jewelry piece by piece, designer clothes that had once defined her, each sale a small death of her former life. The penthouse was paid off, but carrying costs were crushing: property taxes, maintenance fees, Mrs. Chen's salary. They were living together but struggling. Tension seeped into their relationship like water through cracks. Small arguments about nothing. Marcus hated feeling like a burden. Catherine hated feeling helpless, unable to solve problems with money that was running out. Emma sensed the adult's worry and became quieter, more withdrawn. Marcus's lowest moment came in month 2, a rejection email from a tech company in Austin. The position would have required moving, starting fresh away from the scandal. The thought crossed his mind. Would it be easier to just leave, start over somewhere? Emma's classmates didn't know somewhere Marcus wasn't that guy. He sat with the thought for an hour before realizing he couldn't. Catherine wasn't the problem. She was the solution. Running away wasn't the answer. Catherine hit her own rock bottom the same week. Robert's assistant called with an offer return to the company in a reduced role, publicly state the relationship was a temporary lapse in judgment, and things with Marcus and financial support would return. She was tempted, so tempted. Watching Marcus struggle, Emma suffer, maybe it would be better for everyone if she just gave up, went back to lies. She sat with the thought for an hour before realizing she couldn't. She'd already given up her entire life for authenticity. She couldn't go back now. One evening, Emma asleep, they sat in the living room. Silence heavy between them like a physical presence. Maybe this was a mistake. Marcus's voice came quiet, defeated. Catherine's heart stopped. What? Maybe we moved too fast. Maybe we should... He couldn't finish the sentence. Maybe we should what? Marcus finally looked at her. I don't know. I'm tired, Catherine. Tired of struggling. Tired of watching Emma suffer. Tired of feeling like I ruined your life. You didn't ruin my life. You saved it. From what? Look at us, Catherine. We're broke. We're blacklisted. We're living on your savings and my last paycheck. Emma had to change schools. You lost your company. Your father won't speak to you. How is any of this better? Catherine crossed to him, taking his face in her hands with desperate certainty. Because I'm free. Because I'm happy. Because for the first time in my life I'm living for me. Not for my father. Not for the board. Not for some imagined version of success. For me. And for you. And for us. I'm scared we won't make it. Me too. What if we can't find jobs? What if we run out of money? Then we figure it out. How? I don't know, but together. They pulled each other close, holding tight, both crying from stress and fear and exhaustion and relief, because they'd said it out loud, fears in the open, and they were still here. A week later, Marcus's phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer too many reporters, but something made him pick up. Mr. Webb. This is Lisa Martinez from Catalyst Ventures. I'm a partner at a venture capital firm here in the city. I watched your interview and I'd like to discuss a potential opportunity with you and Ms. Sterling. Would you be available to meet this afternoon? Marcus's eyebrows shot up. Yes, we could do that. Excellent. I'll have my assistant send details. And Mr. Webb. What you both did took real courage. I admire that. The meeting was at a coffee shop in the village neutral territory, Lisa had said. She was younger than Marcus expected, mid-30s, with sharp eyes and a sharper suit. Thank you for coming. I know this must be a surreal time. I'll get straight to the point. I watched your interview, and I saw two people willing to take enormous personal risks for what they believe in. That's the kind of character I look for in founders. Founders! Catherine's voice was carefully neutral. I want to invest in you, both of you. Lisa pulled out a tablet and swiped through a presentation. Ms. Sterling, your work on the Atlas project was brilliant. The efficiency gains you achieved were remarkable. But you were constrained by Sterling Technologies' existing infrastructure and politics. What if you weren't? What if you could build something from the ground up, designed specifically to help companies modernize their systems without the bloat and bureaucracy? Catherine leaned forward, a spark of interest flickering in her eyes for the first time in weeks. You're talking about a consulting firm. I'm talking about a technology company. You build the platform, the tools, the frameworks, the systems, and you license them. Companies implement with your guidance. You scale without being limited by billable hours. That would require significant capital, development costs, staffing. I'm prepared to offer seed funding, $500,000 for 15% equity. The number hung in the air like possibility made concrete. 500,000. A lifeline. A second chance. But Catherine was shaking her head and Marcus was surprised he thought she'd jump at it. That's not enough. Lisa's eyebrows raised. I'm sorry. Catherine leaned forward with the confidence Marcus recognized from boardrooms. 500,000 might cover initial development, but not hiring, not scaling, not the infrastructure we'd need. We'd run out of runway in 6 months. We need $2 million for 18% equity. Lisa studied Catherine for a long moment, then smiled. You haven't lost your edge, but $2 million is a lot for a company that doesn't exist yet. Run by a CEO who resigned in scandal. I'm afraid I'll have to pass. She stood shaking hands. But I admire the confidence. If you change your mind about my offer, call me. She left them sitting there. Marcus turned to Catherine. Why did you do that? We need that money. We need the right money. 500,000 wasn't enough to succeed. It was just enough to fail slowly. Better to have no deal than the wrong deal. Marcus saw the logic, but felt disappointment crushing down. So close to a solution. Now back to square one. A week later, Lisa called back. Mr. Webb, I have a proposition. I've been thinking about Ms. Sterling's counter, and I've brought in another VC firm, Thompson Ventures. They're interested in co-investing. We're prepared to offer $2.5 million for 20% equity, split between our two firms, on one condition. Marcus's heart raced. What condition? You need to prove concept with 3 pilot clients in 6 months. If you hit that milestone, we proceed to Series A. If you don't, she trailed off, but the implication was clear. The deal would end. They'd lose the company. What do you say? Marcus looked at Catherine. She was already nodding. We'll take it. They hung up and stared at each other. Then Catherine laughed, the first real laugh Marcus had heard in weeks. We did it. We actually did it. This is our second chance, but it's conditional. We have to deliver. Then we'll deliver. For the first time in 2 months, the future didn't look bleak. It looked possible. 4 months into the relationship, Catherine brought up marriage again. They were on the couch after Emma had fallen asleep, both exhausted from another 16-hour day building their platform. The company was showing real promise, now 8 pilot clients, all reporting significant results. But the conversation shifted when Catherine turned to him with that expression he'd come to recognize, the one that meant she'd been thinking about something for days. I know it's fast. Normal couples date for years. But nothing about us has been normal, and I don't want to wait for some arbitrary timeline to make this official. Marcus took her to Prospect Park the next evening, to the oak tree where they'd had their first real date during month 2, when they'd been living on hope and fumes. He had no ring yet, couldn't afford the one he wanted, but he had certainty, and that would have to be enough. Catherine Sterling. I don't have a ring yet. I don't have a plan. I have a 6-year-old daughter, a startup with barely any revenue, and an apartment that's too small for 3 people. I have a family that's loud and nosy and will drive you crazy. I have grief I'm still carrying and fears that haven't gone away. But I also have more love for you than I knew I was capable of feeling. So will you marry me? Catherine's answer came through tears and laughter, her yes filling the space between them like oxygen after drowning. Yes, I'll marry you. I'll marry you and your loud family and your terrible pancakes and your beautiful daughter. I'll marry all of it. They decided on the name together, the Webb Sterlings. Both names equal partners. The headlines would write themselves, but they'd be too busy building something real to care. Telling Emma the next morning over chocolate chip pancakes, Marcus's signature burnt ones proved easier than expected. Are you getting married? She asked before they could even start the conversation. Marcus blinked. How did you know? You both look smiley and scared. That's what people look like in movies before they say they're getting married. Her questions were simple, direct. Would Catherine live with them all the time? Yes. Would she be her stepmom? Yes. Emma's verdict came swift. Good. Emily at school has a stepmom and she says it's like having two moms except one of them doesn't know all your embarrassing baby stories. Also, can we get a dog? The media response was predictably vicious. Shotgun wedding. Catherine Sterling locks down her conquest. Betting pools started on how long the marriage would last. Preston's mother gave another interview. Robert Sterling's no comment felt worse than condemnation. But in their scrappy Brooklyn office, still mostly empty, except for desks and a whiteboard covered in ideas, none of it mattered as much as the work. 6 months after the scandal broke, they hit their milestone. 3 pilot clients had become 8, all showing measurable results. Lisa Martinez called to schedule the Series A pitch. The conference room at Catalyst Ventures felt like stepping into a different universe, one Marcus and Catherine had earned their way back into through sheer force of will and late nights. They presented together their dynamic, clear Catherine handled strategy and vision with the brilliance that had built Sterling Technologies. Marcus covered technical implementation with the practical expertise that made systems actually work. The metrics spoke for themselves. 35% productivity increase on average, 40% reduction in task completion time, 50% improvement in employee satisfaction, 90% client retention. The questions came sharp. What about the scandal? How does that affect your ability to sell to enterprise clients? Catherine handled it with brutal honesty. Some clients will never work with us because of it, but the clients who do are the ones who value results over optics. Those are the clients we want. What's your moat? What prevents bigger companies from copying your approach? Marcus leaned forward. Our moat is that we actually care. Big enterprise software companies build for features lists and sales decks. We build for the people who actually use the software every day. After 2 hours, the VCs asked them to step out. Marcus and Catherine waited in the hallway, hands clasped, trying not to hope too hard. 30 minutes felt like 30 hours. When they were called back in, Lisa was smiling. We're in, all of us. 15 million Series A for 25% equity, led by Catalyst Ventures and Thompson Ventures with 2 other firms joining. The number hit like electricity. $15 million. A post-money valuation of $60 million. Life-changing money. Proof that they'd been right to take the risk. But Lisa wasn't finished. We have conditions. You need to scale to 20 employees in 12 months. You need to achieve $2 million in annual recurring revenue. And you need to expand beyond New York at least 2 more cities. If you miss any of these metrics, we have the right to force a sale of the company or bring in new management. Catherine asked for 24 hours to discuss. Lisa gave them 12. That night, sitting on the penthouse balcony with the city spread below them, they weighed impossible choices. The metrics were aggressive. 20 employees meant hiring almost 2 people per month. 2 million ARR meant quintupling their client base while scaling the team and expanding geographically. 6 months ago, we had nothing, Marcus pointed out. No jobs, no money, no prospects. We were living on your savings and hope, and now we're debating whether to accept $15 million because we're worried the targets are too aggressive. Catherine laughed at the absurdity. When you put it that way, we've already bet everything once. On each other, on this company, on building something real. Why stop now? They called Lisa at 9 the next morning, 3 hours before the deadline. We're in. The scaling phase was brutal. First hire Sarah Chen, 45, former VP at Oracle, tired of corporate politics and hungry for something meaningful. Then engineers, salespeople, customer success. From 2 people to 12 in 3 months. The office expanded. Catherine insisted on a good coffee maker, not expensive espresso, but quality that showed they valued their team. Marcus insisted on proper equipment. We're building a company for people who actually do the work. But the growth came at a cost. 80-hour weeks became normal. Marcus missed Emma's school play, her soccer game, a parent-teacher conference. Each absence carved guilt deeper into his chest. Catherine fell asleep reading bedtime stories to Emma, exhaustion claiming her mid-sentence. One night Emma asked the question that broke him. "Daddy, are you going to be this busy forever?" The fight happened in month 4, late at the office. "We're building a company but losing each other, and losing time with Emma." Catherine's response came defensive, afraid. "We have to succeed or we lose everything. The metrics aren't optional. We signed a contract." "What's the point of success if we're miserable? If Emma grows up with parents who are never there?" "What do you want me to do, Marcus? We made commitments. We have employees depending on us. We have investors expecting results. I want us to remember why we did this. We didn't build this company to become slaves to it. We built it to have a life that's real." Catherine broke down, then admitting what terrified her most. "I'm scared if we slow down, we'll fail." Marcus pulled her close. "I'm scared if we don't slow down, we'll lose what matters." They recommitted to boundaries. Sunday dinners at his mother's house became sacred, non-negotiable. Marcus picked Emma up from school 3 days a week, leaving the office at 3 without apology. Date nights once a week, no work talk allowed. They hired a VP of engineering to share Marcus's load. They learned to delegate, to trust the team they were building. The growth accelerated anyway. New clients signed every week. Boston became office number 2. Chicago became number 3. Client count climbed from 8 to 34 over 5 months. Revenue grew from $15,000 a month to $180,000. They were on track for $2 million ARR. Business Insider ran a feature, Webb Sterling Technologies, the startup built on second chances. The article was actually positive, focusing on redemption instead of scandal. Catherine appeared on the cover looking confident, competent, completely different from the tabloid villain of 6 months earlier. Catherine's mother, Elizabeth, reached out as they planned the wedding. Tentative at first, offering her garden in Connecticut for the ceremony. The relationship was fragile, but present. Robert still wasn't speaking to Catherine, 8 months of silence that hurt more than any words could. "He's stubborn," Elizabeth explained gently, "but he's also hurt. Give him time." Emma proved surprisingly helpful with wedding planning, full of ideas and enthusiasm. She insisted on sunflowers, her favorite. She wanted to be flower girl naturally. She asked if her best friend Sophie could be junior bridesmaid. "This is your day too, sweetheart." Emma's response made both adults tear up. "It's our day. We're becoming a family." The invitation list was small by design. 50 people, Marcus's family and friends, Catherine's mother and a few trusted colleagues, Edward Park from the Sterling board, Lisa Martinez, their team. Notably absent, Robert Sterling Preston Ashford, most of Catherine's old world. Marcus bought the ring he'd wanted, 2 carats, simple platinum band, $15,000, that would have been impossible 8 months earlier. Catherine didn't know. He planned to give it to her at the altar, replacing the temporary $200 silver band they'd bought together. 2 weeks before the wedding, they finally got the dog. Emma connected immediately with a golden retriever puppy at the shelter. "Her name is Biscuit," she announced with absolute certainty. No discussion, just fact. The puppy brought chaos, chewed shoes, accidents, boundless energy, but also so much joy that the chaos felt worth it. The wedding day arrived unseasonably warm for late November. Elizabeth's garden in Greenwich was transformed, sunflowers and white roses everywhere, simple wooden chairs, string lights ready to twinkle when evening came. 50 guests, intimate and meaningful. Marcus waited under the flower arch with Jason as best man, wearing a charcoal suit that actually fit his hands, only slightly shaking. Emma took her role as flower girl with profound seriousness. She walked slowly, deliberately, scattering petals with intense concentration. When she reached Marcus, she whispered loudly enough for the front rows to hear, "I did good, right, Daddy? Perfect, sweetheart." Then Catherine appeared, and Marcus's breath caught. Her dress was simple ivory, tea-length, elegant, without ostentation. Her hair hung loose around her shoulders. She carried sunflowers and white roses. She was radiant. Elizabeth walked her down the aisle, not Robert, who was still absent. At the altar, Elizabeth placed Catherine's hand in Marcus's with a whispered instruction, "Take care of my daughter. Always." The ceremony began with words about unexpected love and choosing courage. Halfway through, the sound of a car pulling up made heads turn. Robert Sterling walked toward the gathering wearing a suit carrying a wrapped gift. Catherine froze, every muscle tensing. Robert reached the back row, caught Catherine's eye, and mouthed, "I'm sorry. Please continue." He sat down. Elizabeth gasped. Catherine's eyes filled with tears, but she nodded to the officiant. "Yes, please." The vows were personal, raw, honest. Catherine spoke about doors opened when she was at her lowest, about being seen instead of performed, about courage learned through love. Marcus talked about life lived instead of survived, about risks taken for beauty, about promises made to choose each other daily. Emma's stage whisper during the pause cut the tension perfectly. "Now can we talk about the dog?" The gathering burst into laughter. Even Catherine laughed through tears, and Marcus grinned. "We'll discuss Biscuit later, sweetheart." When Marcus revealed the real engagement ring, 2 carats platinum perfect, Catherine gasped. "Marcus, I wanted to give you this here, in front of everyone who matters." The kiss after they were pronounced husband and wife was deep, real, full of promise. Guests erupted in applause. Emma yelled her approval. Biscuit, tied to a chair nearby, barked excitedly. The string lights twinkled as the sun set. It was perfect. The reception brought toasts that mattered. Jason talked about the text he'd gotten at 2 a.m. months ago. "I think I just ruined my life." His response, "Or you just started living it." He raised his glass, "To the brave." Rachel spoke about skepticism turned to admiration. Lisa Martinez about resilience and integrity. But the moment that shifted everything came when Robert stood. The room quieted. Catherine froze. Robert approached the microphone, cleared his throat. "I wasn't invited to this wedding. I came anyway, because I'm a stubborn old man, and because I was wrong." He looked directly at Catherine. "I spent your entire life trying to shape you into what I thought you should be. Strong, ruthless, successful by my definition. And you became all those things. But somewhere along the way I forgot to let you be happy." His voice cracked. "When you canceled your wedding to Preston, I saw it as failure, as weakness, as you throwing away everything I'd built. But I was wrong. You weren't throwing it away. You were claiming something better." He looked at Marcus. "I judged you without knowing you. I saw an employee taking advantage of my daughter. I didn't see a good man who genuinely loves her, who treats her as an equal, who makes her happy." Back to Catherine, his eyes wet. "I've missed 8 months of your life, missed seeing you build this company. I can't get that time back. But if you'll let me, I'd like to try being your father again. Not the one who demands perfection, the one who celebrates your happiness. I'm proud of you, Catherine, not for what you built at Sterling Technologies, for having the courage to walk away and build something better. I love you, and I'm sorry." He sat down. Catherine crossed to his table, and for a moment they just looked at each other. Then she hugged him, and Robert broke completely, holding his daughter while they both cried. Half the guests cried with them. Catherine and Robert stepped outside for 15 minutes. When they returned, both had been crying, but were smiling. Robert joined the family table, and Emma immediately started telling him about Biscuit with the enthusiasm only a 7-year-old could muster. Robert listened, actually engaged, a different man than the one who'd called for a vote of no confidence. 5 years later, they gathered in the same garden for Thanksgiving. Emma was 11 now, tall and confident, dreaming of becoming a veterinarian. She played with her younger brother Nathan, 4 years old, stubborn like Catherine, kind like Marcus. Catherine was 6 months pregnant with their third child, a daughter they'd decided to name Sarah, honoring Natalie's memory and embracing their blended future. The company had been acquired by Microsoft 6 months earlier for $400 million. Marcus and Catherine stayed on as division leaders, maintaining autonomy and culture while achieving financial security that would last generations. 200 employees across 8 cities, $80 million in annual revenue before acquisition, 500 enterprise clients, a Harvard Business School case study, a redemption story complete. They'd bought a brownstone in Park Slope near Marcus's mother. Sunday dinners remained sacred. Emma attended school with Rachel's kids. Robert was present in their lives, cautiously, respectfully learning to be the father Catherine needed instead of the one he'd thought she should have. He doted on Emma, and Nathan, excited about his third grandchild. Preston had married 3 years ago, seemed genuinely happy, sent a birth announcement when he had a daughter. Catherine sent a baby gift, cordial, distant, but without animosity. He'd written a note with their wedding invitation years ago. "I'm grateful you had the courage I didn't. Wish you all the best." At Thanksgiving dinner, 30 people in Elizabeth's garden, Marcus watched Catherine laugh with his mother while helping set tables. Emma taught Nathan how to throw a ball for Biscuit, now 5 years old and perfectly trained. Robert discussed business strategy with their VP of sales. Rachel's kids ran around with the boundless energy of childhood. This was what they'd built. Not just a company, a life. Catherine found him watching, slipped her hand into his, rested the other on her baby bump. "What are you thinking about?" "That night when you showed up at my door." "I think about it all the time." "What do you think about?" "How close I came to not knocking. How I almost went back to the hotel. How I almost married Preston and lived a lie forever. How terrified I was when I finally knocked. I almost didn't answer." "I know." She smiled. "One decision. One moment of choosing courage over caution. It changed absolutely everything." "Would you do it again?" Knowing everything that came after the scandal, the struggle, the uncertainty. Marcus looked around, Emma laughing, Nathan playing family, gathering life built from courage. "Yes, 1,000 times over." "Me too. Every hardship, every judgment, every moment of doubt, all of it was worth it." "We started with nothing but courage and each other," Marcus observed quietly. "And we built everything that matters." Catherine leaned into him. "That's what love is, not the fairy tale. The willingness to build something real, even when it's hard." Robert approached. "Catherine, Marcus, Elizabeth is asking for a family photo before dinner. All of us together." And they gathered Catherine, Marcus, Emma, Nathan, Linda and Rachel's family, Elizabeth and Robert, extended family and chosen family. The photo captured love redemption, second chances made real. That evening, after everyone had gone, they put the kids to bed together. Emma asked the question that seemed to come from some deep wisdom. "Mom, do you think we'll always be this happy?" Catherine tucked her in with gentle hands. "Happiness isn't permanent, sweetheart. It's something you choose every day. Like how you and Dad chose each other." "Exactly like that." Emma closed her eyes, satisfied. "Love you, Mom." "Love you too, Emma." In their bedroom later, Marcus and Catherine looked at the photo wall documenting their journey. Natalie's picture honored and remembered, their wedding photo, Emma's school pictures through the years, Nathan's baby photos, family photos with Biscuit, Catherine's magazine covers, company milestones, a life built from one brave choice. Catherine settled into bed, hand on her bump. "Thank you." "For what?" "For opening the door." Marcus pulled her close, his voice warm with certainty and gratitude. "Thank you for knocking." They fell asleep together, safe and whole, their perfect ending born from the courage to choose love when the whole world said not to. Outside, New York glittered with possibilities they'd already claimed. Inside, a family slept peacefully, proof that sometimes the reckless choice is the right one, that love matters more than comfort, and that doors opened in faith can lead to everything worth having.